A 49-year-old man who was arrested in connection with a fire at Parliament over the weekend is expected to appear in the Cape Town Magistrates Court today. The Hawks say he will be charged under the National Key Point Act. The suspect was caught with suspected stolen property after he gained entry to the parliamentary precinct. For more on the story, let's cross live now to our colleague Atule Joka. Atule, very good morning to you. You're out. What can we expect in this court appearance this morning?
Well, Desiree, just a few moments ago, about 30 minutes ago, we were outside court, but we were told we should come outside Parliament as there will be a briefing here that will be conducted by the Fire Chief and Divisional Commander Simon Abrahams to brief us about the fires that broke out, that reignited here last night. We understand that the fire had been contained and most of the firefighters had stood down, but later in the afternoon, the fire started to flare up again, causing a further damage, because according to the report that we had received before that was that the old National Assembly, which had its roof collapsed, was the one that was damaged, and also this new National Assembly. Some parts of it were damaged, and also the gallery, we understand the chambers, parts of them were also gutted. But after that fire, another update came out later on to say that the 4th and the 5th floor were completely gutted as well. So the divisional commander, Mr. Simon Abrahams, will come anytime from now. I see Moloto Mutapo, the spokesperson, also coming surely to tell us he will be coming to anytime to give us an update as to what has truly transpired. But I was in court at Desiree not so long ago. Yes, the 49-year-old man who is at the center of the allegations about what has truly transpired will be appearing in that particular court. So we'll hear more about what has happened. But at this stage, we cannot reveal the names and also the makeup or sort of the characteristics of the man. But after that court appearance, after he has pleaded, after he had appeared before the magistrate, we'll be able to give you more about the man. And also, Lebu did ask me earlier on if there are any parliamentary people around the courts. But I did tell him that maybe the person could not be of interest to the parliamentary and the politicians, because due to the fact that his makeup and characteristics seem far off from what or the objectives that have been bandied around. But we'll hear more on that at Desiree when we come. But Mr. Simon Abrahams will be here to give us an update about the flyers that flare up last night. I will ask my colleague Arif Khan to just bring you closer, Desiree, to this briefing so that you can hear more about what truly transpired here yesterday. Thank you.
Go for the chief. Morning, everybody. I'm Ian Schnetter, the Chief Fire Officer of the Fire and Rescue Service for the city. This is our Executive Director, Mr. Vincent Botto, and Divisional Commander Simon Abrahams, that has been at the scene now since Sunday. Just want to give you a briefing in terms of the current situation. At present, we have 2 fire engines and their crews on scene with our command vehicle and our breathing apparatus vehicle. At present, it's very quiet. The Divisional Commander, Frank Forbay, is doing a preliminary inspection now currently on the 4th and the 5th floor to see whether there are any further hotspots. We have been assisted by EMS with their drone in terms of looking for further hotspots with a thermal imaging camera. At present, as indicated, it's very, very, very quiet. Yesterday, it's between 4 and 5 o'clock. It was pretty quiet up till then, but there was a lot of heat that was trapped up on the 4th and the 5th floor. And while firefighting crews were up there, the southeaster, as it does normally in Cape Town, increased, and with a little bit of ventilation, the fire caught hold in between the roof voids up on the 5th floor, and then the fire spread from there quite rapidly, even with the crews up in the vicinity. At that time, we had 6 fire engines on scene. They requested an extra 4 fire engines just after 5 o'clock. And since then, the crews have been working throughout the night, and around 11 o'clock last night, they pretty much got the fire under control. and then it was the hard slog of doing damping down and making sure that the fire didn't spread any further than that. So at present, very, very quiet, and if nothing further, or they do the final inspections and they find that everything's out, probably by the end of the day, we should be having this thing sorted out and then handing over the building to the authorities for further inspections.
By the end of the evening yesterday, there were concerns about the rafters on the roof of the National Assembly chamber. Are you able to give us any update around whether they are still intact, if they've collapsed? What's the state of the roof of the National Assembly chamber?
Mr. Abrams was up there. He can give you direct information around that roof, but there are sections, if you're looking at the National Assembly, there's a copper-covered roofing that's on top there. A large section, if you're looking at the building now to your left, there's a large section of the roof that has collapsed, but it hasn't collapsed further than the 4th and the 5th floor. Mr. Abrams could give you further information exactly in terms of those rafters.
Okay, Mercedes here from SABC. What is the current state of the building of the old assembly? And also, why didn't you use water bombs? Somebody said, from a layman's position, is that you don't need water bombs here because the building would have collapsed. It is for fell fires. So you, the expert, can you explain?
Okay, just in terms of the old National Assembly, that old the 5th floor, that roof and everything, that structure's all destroyed. The floors below that, I've got extensive smoke and water damage. And then to answer your question with regards to aerial water bombing on a structural fire, when the request came through for using aerial support, the roof was still intact. So if you're going to water bomb with a helicopter with a roof that's intact, it's going to serve absolutely no purpose. Internal firefighting is the best method for that. If the roof had vented and they're still wanting to use aerial support and water bombing, there are crews inside there are crews outside. It's a very dangerous practice to use water bombing on a structural fire.
Is it safe to go into any? I know that other one is not safe. Is it safe to go in there? And by yesterday, J.P. Smith was saying that the old assembly chamber was still standing. It was only the new wing chamber which had collapsed. What is the situation?
Okay, from our knowledge, and Mr. Abrams will probably give you confirmation of that, the new National Assembly, which is that going straight to the doors, that is completely destroyed from bottom right through to the top. The old National Assembly, my understanding, is where the gym area is and offices, where that is destroyed and indicated. It's on the 5th floor, but the floors beneath that has got smoke and water damage.
So would you say the chamber, the new wing chamber, National Assembly, is completely destroyed? By yesterday they said it was 98%?
Yeah, it's completely destroyed. It's going to take a lot of rehabilitation to get that back to where it was.
Mr. Abrams, can you give us an update on the roof?
Okay, as the chief said, the roof structure has collapsed in certain areas. You must remember this roof is made up of a center copper roof sheeting. So it's a corrugated sheeting, apparently made out of copper. And then the areas around it is tiled. The roof construction is, as you look at it now, it's a tiled roof on the outside. Underneath the tiles, you've got a bitumen waterproofing layer. Underneath that, you've got tongue and groove Oregon pine, like floorboards. Remember, it's a very old building, very old construction. That's the type of construction method they used in the past. So it's your tile, the bitumen layer, which is highly flammable, and according to the technicians here, they just replaced that bitumen layer a few years ago, so it's still fresh bitumen, okay, flammable. The wooden floorboards underneath that, and then you've got the roof void. Then of course, the building being so old, there's probably lots of dust and things up there, and these are all flammable and fuel for a fire. So what happened was, as soon as the southeaster came up yesterday, there was a bit of venting, and the trapped heat inside, and the fire just took off. So
Is there an idea on when the cleanup can start?
Well, at this moment in time, like Mr. Schnettler said, we will hand, once we finish, once we're happy that the building is safe from a fire point of view, we will hand over to SAP, and the police services will then get most probably structural engineers in once they've done their inspection, the police. Structural engineers will then come in, and that's up to to them to decide when they're going to start cleaning up, etc.
San, what are the hotspots currently at the moment inside?
Well, at the moment, according to Mr. Forbay, that's just doing another survey right now. There are very, very few hotspots, and that's why they're doing a survey now just to check on that.
But it's in the National Assembly?
In the National Assembly, the new National Assembly, and the area above that, yeah, the office area above that.
What is it that can actually cause it to reignite again? Is it wind or anything? Are you really sure that you've put out the fire?
Well, yes. That's why they're going to be here the whole day. They're going to be monitoring all the areas, making sure that any smouldering embers that may still be there are extinguished. So they'll be here the whole day doing that. And yes, if the southeaster comes up a bit later on, there is always that possibility, but we will have crews on site to knock it down before that happens. So that's what they're doing right now, making sure that all hot areas are extinguished.
Tell me about the roof on top, because I understood that the reason why it was so fueling is because it's wooden structures on top. Tell us what is happening there,
Yep,
and what
yep.
is the situation right there from the roof?
Yeah, sorry ma'am, obviously yesterday with the fire and the fire going into the National Assembly section, without the fire actually venting through the roof. If you can imagine an oven, and you keep the door closed, you want to keep the heat inside, and that builds up inside, and that's what basically cooks your food. Same thing happens in this thing. Your wheat gets trapped up into the top layers of the building, and everything gets heated up. And what Mr. Abrams has indicated with the bitumen and with the flammable material and dust collection, it's a recipe for a fire to take off. And as I said earlier on, we had crews up there, they were on site, and that fire then still took off in terms of those things. So in terms of your question, ma'am, with that heat, all that heat got trapped up in that roof section.
What are the operations for the rest of the day?
We've got fresh crews coming in this morning to relieve the 2 fire engines that are currently on site. And those crews will be, as Mr. Abrams has indicated, will be monitoring the situation throughout the day to ensure that there is no reignition of any type of embers at the end of the day. I have given instruction to my crews that they will not leave this site until the last spark or ember is out in this building.
And how are the firefighters doing? Last night we heard reports of the firefighters not having been fed, not having received water. Michael member J.P. Smith refuted that, saying that fresh crews were brought in at about 5 o'clock last night.
No, yesterday from about 2 o'clock the crews arrived on scene. The previous crews were relieved. So from 2 o'clock yesterday afternoon until I left here, it was still the crews that had arrived from 2 o'clock. So they'd only been here about 5 or 6 hours. We did arrange meals for the staff members, albeit it came through a little bit late, but last night, just after I left, they were fed with 2 meals last night at the end of the day. Unfortunately, it's if you want to call it a complaint that comes from some of our firefighters, but we do make arrangements to feed them as best we can at the scene.
And safety is not only about putting the fire out, it's also about cooling of the building. Yesterday, the Minister, Patricia Delol, was saying they're waiting for the building to be cooled off. Then you hand it over so that the investigations will start. Are you satisfied? Is the building cooled off? Because yesterday I understood it was at 200 degrees.
Yeah, there's quite a high temperatures yesterday evening, but at the moment the building is quite cool, but it's still unsafe for anybody that's going in without any safety equipment and that's not experienced in terms of firefighting or structural. So the building is not going to be declared open for anybody to go in until we're satisfied that it's safe enough for them to go in.
They're also concerned about the fire moving towards the drainage and also approaching those palm trees. Can you give us an update about that?
I was here last night when Minister Delol and the Speaker were here, and there was a concern about it, but the firefighters at that time had already reached into the roof section. There was a request to cut the tree down between Tainas and the National Assembly. It wasn't necessary because the firefighters had it under control. And at the time, and up to now, and I think right throughout the whole of the operations yesterday and the day before, there was no real threat to Tainas because that was averted quite well.
Yeah. So the valve, one of the valves that kicks the sprinkler into action, according to reports, was closed prior to the fire started. Who gives authority or permission for the closing or reopening of such an important valve?
I think so that's still subject to investigation in terms of that, and that once the SAPs, they're taking over the investigation around the forensic aspect of it, and they will be able to give you a report on that at the moment of time.
Isn't there a regulation in the fire regulation determining whose responsibility is the closure and the reopening of a valve?
That is subject in terms of I'm not sure what your valve you're talking about in terms of
The valve,
which other.
apparently the valve was closed at kicks the water sprinkling to action. That is what is alleged. I'm not saying it's a fact,
no, I
it's
think
an allegation.
those are still maybe allegations, and it has to be confirmed or denied by the forensic investigation. So.
If there are no more questions, I still have and maybe a follow-up depending on what you're going to say. I want to ask you about the NCOP. When I came here on the day the fire started early in the morning, I initially thought it was in the NCOP side because I went from that side, I couldn't enter. It was very early. I want to know, has the NCOP, because these buildings are connected, is there somewhere where the NCOP has been touched? I mean, it's connected to the National the old Assembly building. Because I thought it's the NCOP that was burning, so it wasn't. Is there anything, a door or a window which has been touched or affected by the fire?
I'm not sure which the NCOP at myself, what is actually the NCOP section of the building.
Is there at the corner? It's opposite.
Is that where the gym area of the parliament?
No. It's the NCOP, the National Council of Provinces.
It wasn't official.
So it's maybe a difficult question to ask the firefighters. Because remember, they're not familiar with the names of the buildings, the layout of the buildings. So it's a bit unfair, and that's why the chief is saying it's where the gym area is, and the offices in that section that took alight and was destroyed.
Okay, then
so if that is the NCOP, I don't know, but that is the area.
Then the question that you can answer for me, how many buildings have been burnt or have been affected? Then I will know whether the NCOP has been affected.
Okay. Well, if you're looking at the building from now, the National Assembly and the floors on the fifth and the fifth floor from here, that's all affected up top here. And then if it is the NCOP, it's the building to the right on the corner, on the end. That is the other section that's damaged. And that's also on the fifth floor where it's burnt through the roof.
Is that the NCOP?
I'm not sure.
No,
I don't know.
It's an answer question for after the firefighters. They do not know the name of the buildings.
The old assembly, which was said to house some of the old artifacts, which were still intact at the time, we got the report maybe a day or 2 days ago. Are those artifacts still intact?
From my understanding and from having a brief inspection on Sunday when we came through from the old section, there is an artifact room and everything is intact there still.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, that was the City of Cape Town Fire and Rescue Services giving us an outline and also an update about the fires that broke out here yesterday. We understand that at about 4 to 5 p.m. in the evening, the fire reignited and broke out again. So they are saying that the fire is now contained. They are trying to monitor the hotspots, and then after they've checked those hotspots, they will make sure that their fire crews stand down, and then they will try and hand over the buildings to the people that are supposed to do assessments here at Desiree. They are saying the fires started at around 4 to 5 p.m. It happened in the void between the roof sheets. That's when the fire started again and spread through across touring to some of those buildings. We did ask some of the concern about the detainees, the president's offices that are here, that the fires were spreading through to that particular building, but they are saying they did manage to contain that fire. There were also calls for the palm trees because we understood that the fire was almost 10 meters to those trees, but the firefighters managed to contain that fire without having the trees to cut down as well. As you heard, Desiree, that the National Assembly of South Africa, strategic body of South Africa, is gutted from bottom to down up. The gallery is gone, all the floors are gone, all the floors here of the National Assembly are completely erased. That is the briefing that we get from the National Fire and Rescue Service from the City of Cape Town at Desiree. So those are some of the updates that they were giving us, and also they are saying that what they will do now is also to just to monitor what will happen here before they hand over the building. A spokesperson for the Parliament, Moloto Mutabo, is also making his way here. Just to talk to us about that update we got there. Mr. Mutabo, the update that we get here from the Fire and Rescue Services is that the National Assembly is completely guided from bottom up to the top. Also, what's the sense of the Parliament about these recent developments now?
Yeah, well, you know what, we can never express our distress enough, as well as the devastation. This is a very important historical building. It is occupying a very important place in our constitutional democracy. It is a pride and joy of the people of South Africa. So much history is contained here. This building, as you would know, it was created in the 1980s to accommodate the tricameral parliament of the apartheid regime. And this is where the National Assembly has been having its plenary sittings. The part of the old assembly wing also rich history. It is a building that was created, one of the first buildings here in the Cape Colony during the colonial era of our history, built in 1885. One of the first buildings in the Cape Colony to have, probably in the country, in the entire country, to have electricity. So there is quite a, this is a heritage of the history of South Africa. It is a place where the aspirations of South Africans and the hopes of South Africans are shouldered, and that is where transformative legislation have come out in the last 25-26 years of our democracy. So of course we are distressed. South Africans have got a reason to be saddened by what has happened here. But we are happy, a bit of positive news this morning, that the flare-up that started yesterday afternoon, the firefighters have worked successfully, have waged a very courageous and brave battle throughout the night. And just after midnight, they were able to contain the fire. Of course, further damage has been registered over and above what we have already indicated. The third as well as the fourth and the fifth buildings, which has got offices of the members of parliament as well as the support staff, have been completely destroyed now. The roof, significant portion of the roof, particularly where this flare-up occurred yesterday, has now collapsed. So we are talking about very extensive damage. That's why the Speaker of the National Assembly last night, she was correct to say that initially we were hopeful that a significant portion of this building will be salvaged, that perhaps it will require, refurbishment, etc. But after yesterday's flare-up, without being experts, we assume that it will take years to restore this to its original state.
And also, maybe do you think there was a bit of complacency when you look at the reports that have been coming out, that the sprinkler could not work on time, the fire detection could not also work in time? Some of the concerns around the resources and also the equipment, and also the report by the City of Cape Town Fire Safety and Security Department, that some of the resources were not serviced on time or properly maintained, and also the fact that there were some members of the Parliamentary Protection Services unit which were not here. Do you think was a bit of a complacency? Do you think someone must take the blame for this, especially after what has transpired, especially now that this is a national key point?
Look, the majority of the questions that you are raising will form part of the investigation, and the investigation has already started to determine what could have caused the fire, the sprinkling system, was it working or was it not working? We understand that the valve that's supposed to provide water to the rest of the building was turned off. There need to be an investigation as to what could have been the reason, who is responsible for turning off that valve. So, but the majority of the issues that you are raising, they are subject of the investigation. And once this investigation, and we understand, we are as anxious as the rest of South Africa to get to the bottom of this, because you cannot have such a critical, important institution of our democracy being attacked in the manner that it has been attacked by fire, through fire, etc. So South Africans want answers. The presiding officers, every stakeholder of parliament want answers, and therefore the authorities that are responsible are quite aware that there is a lot of anxiety, and we are hopeful that no stone will be left unturned, that they will do as much as possible without compromising the quality of the investigation to ensure that the outcome of this is communicated as soon as possible. But we must indicate that the South African Police Service remains and has always been responsible for guarding the precincts of Parliament. This is a national key point, and as you know, national key points are guarded by the South African Police Service everywhere you go in the country. So they were here, and that's why they are the first to see the fire immediately after 6 o'clock in the morning of Sunday. They saw the smoke and they went to inspect, as they are supposed to do, because their job is to patrol the area. And they immediately informed the firefighters, who arrived within 6 minutes of being called. So it shows you that the place was not neglected. The police were there. They were able to see the smoke, to see the fire, and to report it. And that's the reason why you've got such kind of a reaction.
Also, you usually have parliamentary protective units as well here to assist.
Yes, we have indicated that because of the pandemic, there was a scaling down of the members of the parliamentary protection services. But whenever that is done, the scaling down is not being done irresponsibly. When you scale down the presence of the parliamentary protection services, you don't leave the place unattended. You also communicate with the South African Police Service to say that there will be minimum presence of the parliamentary protection services, and therefore the South African Police Service is able to increase the presence of their members here. So, but we are saying that there are a number of allegations that are being made, accusations that are being thrown around, answers, questions that needs to be answered. And we must leave it to the relevant authorities to ensure that they investigate fully and to give South Africans answers, to give the members of parliament and the presiding officers answers. And we are confident that will happen as soon as possible.
And also maybe the scaling down, is it the issue that was resolved by the members of parliament? I say, the ANC chief whip saying this is not the matter that we resolved on, that we still need answers on, but you still to be aware of the scaling down. Just talk to us about it.
No, it's a scaling down that I've spoken about, that whenever it happened as a result of the pandemic, there has been a rotational arrangement for members of the staff.
Just not to cut you, I just want to understand, was it not a matter of a resolution taken by all the members of parliament and also different political...
No, this is a staff matter. The members of parliament are not involved. It's an administrative decision. It is a matter that is taken by the executive management led by the secretary to parliament.
So you are well within your rights to do it without informing the country?
Look, there is always information sharing. The accounting officer always keeps the presiding officers as well as the members of parliament of the developments with regard to the staff, particularly because these are staff that are responsible for support, for providing support to the members of parliament. So whenever decisions are made, there is such a communication that is given, and that the communication will continue to be given.
Now that the National Assembly is completely erased from the gallery to maybe this issue now and this debate about the relocation and stuff, which one will be more viable in terms of the budgetary constraints as well, and also some of the conversations that you are having within Parliament? What will be the best way to move forward? And also, maybe was the building insured? Just talk to us about the costs.
Look, the issue of the debate of moving Parliament, whether Parliament should be moved or not, it's a debate that has started over the last 15-20 years. There's been some research that were conducted, and it is a debate that is still alive, and it's a process that is still alive. It is something that has been debated by various stakeholders, whether it should happen or not. We don't want to conflate that with what is happening here. Here we are talking about the fire, we are talking about the destruction of the important institution, a building of our democracy. We are talking about where do we move from here. Investigation must happen. We have said that the work of Parliament will not be affected. The State of the Nation address will continue. The budget vote, the budget speech will continue. The committees of Parliament will continue. There has been offers that has been made from the provincial as well as the local government here in the Western Cape. Those are being considered by the presiding officers with regard to the offer to use their buildings, etc. So the presiding officers, in terms of going forward, they will assess the situation, and make a determination as to where do we go from now. There are many buildings within Parliament that have not been affected. There is only 2 buildings that have been affected. So there is still where the great majority of the staff members reside and the opposition parties, they still have their offices intact, unaffected by the fire. There's various committee rooms that are still not affected. So we'll make an assessment of the situation and see how do we proceed from here. But the most important thing being that the work of Parliament must not be affected.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Moloto Mutabo, spokesperson of the National Assembly, giving us an update about the fires that ravaged through this Parliament here. The National Assembly, we did get a confirmation earlier on that it has been erased from bottom up, from the gallery through to the 4th and the 5th floor, where the support staff are also housed in this particular precinct. Saying, of course, they will leave no stone unturned in their investigation. They will try and make sure that those who are responsible, the remedial actions are taken against them. Because there's a lot of security questions that have been raised. Was the sprinkler working? Why the valve was closed? How can a person gain entry inside? Was the person responsible for igniting that fire in the first place? Was it an electrical fault? There's a lot of questions that are being bandied around. So, and also the Parliamentary Protective Services now complaining that they were not on duty on the day. This is the national key point, which is supposed to be safeguarded 24/7 as per the act that was gazetted. So those are the questions that will be bandied around, that will be discussed, and also the investigations after this building will be handed over to the Hawks after it is cooled down by the members of the Fire and Rescue Services. So we are going to see what will happen here. I asked him about the fact that he's saying that it will take years to restore the building since it is completely destroyed now. I asked if what is the viable option since there is a talk of a relocation. What is the viable option to make sure that the National Assembly is restored? He said they do not want to conflate issues. They want to deal with this issue now and also make those assessments before they can determine what will happen. Desiree.
Atule Joka, thank you so much for bringing us up to speed in terms of the latest in efforts to put out those fires in Cape Town, with Parliament there confirming that yesterday's flare-ups have been put out.